Carla Hills is a former U.S. trade representative, and she joins me now from Washington. Ambassador Hill, thanks so much for joining us. Okay, the person who is at the table right now is Robert Lighthizer. What do you think his main task is right now? To get a deal with the Chinese, or is it going to be a tougher thing to get a deal that the Trump administration will accept?
I suspect that the U.S. team will try to lay out exactly what the U.S. needs in order to move forward. I don't anticipate that they will get a deal during this visit. And it's not because the president has said no deal until he meets with President Xi. It is that there are so many things on the agenda. I think they're going to have to meet again, and perhaps a couple of times again, and try to understand what each side needs to do, what are the political limitations and the economic limitations.
What many people are looking for in the Trump administration, at least, and I believe the U.S. trade representative as well, is structural reform. Do you think that's just too ambitious? And at the end, this trade deal, if there is one, is going to look much different than that?
You have to define what you mean by structural reform. I would ask the Chinese to remove the percentage caps on inward investment. When they joined the World Trade Organization in 2001, they committed to two basic norms: national treatment and non-discrimination. And they don't tell local firms that they can only have 39% in a given sector. They should not tell a U.S. firm that they cannot come in and have greenfield investments in areas of their interests. And it is particularly important because in many instances, the joint ventures that have been mandated have been the pathway to get a hold of intellectual property that the U.S. holds. So it really needs to be corrected.
And yet, if it needs to be corrected, do you think that means that a deal can't be done? We just went through the deadline. It is very tight. It is 4 weeks before those tariffs that are paid, by the way, by U.S. firms go up substantially.
Well, President Trump could take some of the things that they accomplish, perhaps extend and give a little more time. I don't know how they're going to handle the negotiations. Neither one of us is in the negotiating room.
Your best guess, though, as someone who's been in this position before, and I lean on you because at a time when you were dealing with these issues with China, completely different era, I understand, but it was that same debate, right? Is China going to move to a more an economy that more mirrors capitalism in a way and privatization? Because a lot of people are saying now that actually in the last 5 years, especially with the state sponsorship of its companies, that China has actually moved backwards on these issues.
I agree that China has moved backwards. You know, we have a preeminent economist, Nicholas Lardy, who's just released a book called The State Strikes Back. And he, 5 years earlier, had written a book entitled Market Over Mao. And in 2014, when he wrote The Market Over Mao, he was saying, look, the market's working. It's the restrictions are coming down because that's where the profits are. The private sector is making a difference. And what he has noted and profoundly spells out in detail with charts is how that is turned around, that the government is spending more money, flowing more capital to state-owned enterprises that are not making a profit, whereas the private sector in China is making a profit. We have a deal to make because what we're asking of China will actually be good for its economy.
But they don't believe perhaps that it will be good for them politically, which is another argument entirely. Ambassador Hill, before I let you go, you know, we have this issue of this CFO, this Huawei executive who's out on bail in Vancouver. A lot of people are saying this will cloud the talks. But I point more not to the case of one executive or even the 23 charges that have been put against Huawei and her and other executives, but the fact that you had the Intel chiefs in the United States say the other day on Capitol Hill that Huawei poses an intelligence risk to the United States. How do you see going forward with China when basically you have the intelligence community saying any kind of cooperation with this country on that level, even from a private company in China, is a risk?
Well, as an old prosecutor, let me say I don't have the facts of what the accusations are other than that what has been in the press. But if a case can be made, whether it's against somebody from China or Brazil or England, that is for the prosecutors to make that case, and we should look at it objectively. There are facts in earlier instances where there have been, I think, actions where they've stepped across the line.
And we will see, indeed, how long it takes for that case to make its way through the courts. Ambassador Hill, thanks so much for being with us. Really appreciate it.